Hi everyone, I'm really happy to bring in a new guest today for my podcast episode. Today I'm talking to Celeste Hartwell. So we met through an women networking event and I was blown away by her energy. And then we had conversation after, and I think listening to her journey and her view on feminine leadership would be very interesting and I think inspirational for many. So, first of all, I would like to introduce and welcome Celeste. Hey, Celeste.
Hi, Seawing. Thank you so much for having me on. I know that when we met, it was like we talked the same language in a lot of different ways. So I'm so honored to be here and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And one thing for our listeners or audience is that we both can talk quite fast and we're excited about things. So let's see how that go. I'm trying to keep it slow. Um, so Silette has and her website. It's called Divine Feminine Leaders, which I think the name says a lot. And for me, it's always interesting to ask people what inspired them to create a business. Like in your case, I know that you work with women, helping them to attract clients or customers, or actually really about healing the relationship with money and their life. So
Right.
I think we work with a wide spectrum of different people, but a lot of times it's women who obviously have a dream or having challenges to really fully express themselves. So really living the life they really want to. So I think, I know a bit of Celette's background. I know you come from a very corporate, headstrong, analytical background. And so to shift from that mindset to now working very intuitively, that was a journey in itself. So maybe I think the best way is to get you to tell us, a bit of your background and how it all comes together.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I worked in corporate for 18 years, which is a very long time, and I was an analyst in utilities, which is basically electricity and gas. So it's interesting because what I've learned from that is that I'm actually really good at simplifying things, and I really love to help people um step out of chaos and overwhelm and anxiety because I'm such a master at like learning and growing and all of that. And so the divine feminine is really, it's so interesting. It actually came to me. I worked in corporate, this super masculine culture for a very long time. And when I decided to start my business, I actually had a dream with like Tony Robbins and Oprah, and I had like all these different things going on. And I just and the divine feminine was like the words that like Tony Robbins used for me. And I was like, that was so fascinating because I had never even known anything about that. That was like 5 years ago. Um and so through my entrepreneurial journey and like kind of reclaiming my own intuitive skills and relearning, I just really realized that at the crux of everything, I'm really into simplifying things. If you can't tell already,
That's your
um,
special sauce.
it is, it really is. I realized like I've always been kind of a root cause girl. And so realizing that at the at the bottom of everything, whatever's holding us back, whether it's relationship with money or moving forward in our business or, being more visible, etc., it all stems from mindset and
Hmm.
like what our belief system is, because that really is running the show. And so I get really really excited about helping women kind of shed the layers of what we've been conditioned and what we've learned are the things that we need to do in order to succeed, and kind of blowing that all open and being like, no, you actually can do it how it feels best for you and what your soul thinks. And then being able to kind of balance. I think that I get a little nervous when people are like, oh, feminine all the way, right? Because there is this balance of like the masculine and the feminine. It's just that we've been living in this masculine world, especially when it comes to work for so long.
Hmm.
And so being able to bring in the intuition, weave that back into and utilize the structure and the strategies that the masculine
Mm.
has for us can be a really beautiful balance.
There's so many things that I know why we connected, because in my book I talk a lot about archetypes, and in your dream you talk about Tony Robbins and Oprah, and because they are so famous, and as in, famous not in itself, but because we understand what they stand for really clearly, because they have been very consistent in their image and what they do. And so for me, they are kind of a modern archetype. So when you talk about Tony
Mm,
Robbins, people understand he's very motivational, he's a male energy, he's a doer, he's very powerful. And then Oprah, obviously, also very powerful, which is great because she represents the feminine energy, but very powerful, but very different in a Tony Robbins sense. So they
right.
stand for different archetypes, but the same is, but the interesting thing is, I think in the dream, it really sort of, for me, when I hear you, it's that it's sort of bringing the two things together, like not overlapping, but it's like bringing the masculine and the feminine, because you talk about the structure, the masculine world outside, how we operate, which is very similar to, in my book I talk about Athena. Even though Athena, goddess archetype, it's very much a headstrong strategist, um, she's still a goddess, so there's still feminine energy, but she thrives in that masculine structure because she's father's daughter. She's very into that go and get things done energy. And I think, your dream really shows me this balance that I think you were, getting into when it helps women. And a lot of times that I think you need somebody else to tell you that, what is exactly going on when we're in the spin, we're in the storm. Sometimes we don't
Right.
know. And I know, in our conversation that you are really much cutting it through, boiling down to the simple thing, and just really, honing in into what matters and what's really going on. And in some way, that's also a masculine energy to get into it. But once you get into it, the feminine piece comes through, that intuition, non-judgmental, nurturing. So it's fascinating. And I think they bring a lot of sense about being an entrepreneur. We don't always have to wear that masculine mask. And what you were
Right.
bringing into the conversation is a very feminine, yet very productive way to conduct business and fulfill our vision. So, it's truly inspiring. So you mentioned about women, and so that was something that I was planning to ask you. So in your experience, what is it sort of the number one common roadblock with the people you work with, or false ceiling, I sometimes say, instead of roadblock? It's sometimes it is like a ceiling, but it's a false ceiling for women to really express themselves, or so to speak, get what they want. I mean, it sounds bad, but I think sometimes, that's just really real, that, what we've been facing, it felt like a false ceiling. So
I love the term false ceiling for one. Like, I love that. Like, I've never heard anybody articulate it in that way, C Wing. So thank you for that, because it is a false ceiling. And this is such a perfect question because as you were talking, I was like, oh, we need to talk about how women don't allow ourselves to receive.
mm,
Like, to me, it's the receiving. And I think that the masculine structure is so much about the doing, and there is a time and place for action. And
mm,
action is so important. And I will say this and call myself out in this way. Like, I after leaving corporate, I was like, I'm just gonna meditate. I'm just gonna meditate all the time. And I don't have to do anything. Let me tell you, meditating on the mat for 10 hours a day does not get you what you desire in life. Like, it will definitely heal a lot of things, and I think it's really an important, I'm not saying everybody has to do 10 hours a day by any means, but I've done really extended long meditation retreats. Um, but then, like, being able to weave in the action, but really learning how to receive. Like, in some way we've come up with this false belief that we're not worthy,
mm,
and that if anyone tries to do something for us, we can be Miss Independent and we can, like, just do all the things by ourselves. And that's not beneficial. It's not beneficial for the masculine energy, whether it's male or female in that masculine energy, whether it's, like it doesn't serve us, because then we end up getting bitter and resentful and not really being able to nourish our own selves. But it's just so important that we know that we're worthy. We're worthy because we're born. We're worthy because we're in a body, and we get to receive, and just then deepening that muscle of receiving more good and more joy and more of what we desire, because we ask for what we desire, right? But then sometimes we have a hard time allowing that in.
Mm. So I want to dig deeper into the application or the practice of receiving. So you talk about, I mean, yes, it's partly a mindset, but sometimes like practical example, do you mean say, if someone say, hey, you look great today, we should say thank you instead of, well, actually my hair isn't washed, or
Right.
we tend to, oh, you look beautiful. What happened lately? I don't know. Is
Right.
that's like receiving 101. What else? It's like you felt that, sometimes we are great at seeing these examples when we catch friends and family not receiving, and it's weird to catch it myself sometimes. I mean, the compliment is easy to spot. What else that in your everyday life you see people that are this is clearly an example of afraid to receive or not feeling the right to receive?
I think that, we do this in so many ways. I love the example of, oh, you look so great today. And then like shutting off. It's almost like putting up a wall. Like, no,
It's
no,
just
I don't look
makeup
good.
or
Right, right. This is, downplaying like
yes.
whatever is going on, instead of like, I think, I want to talk about this first before I get into what you asked, but so often we think that we're doing a favor or something. I don't know what it is. Like, we think that we're not worthy enough to take the compliments, but really what we're doing is we're kind of like smacking the person that gave us the compliment or gave us the gift in whatever way that is. Whereas like if we just allowed ourselves to like take it in, and I'm not going to lie, it's uncomfortable at first, but if we
Mm,
just breathe into it, oh, thank you, and can just bite our tongue, right? When we're first learning this, you're giving the person who gave you the compliment or the gift a, a gift. You're
mm,
giving that to them back because
mm-hmm,
they feel good giving you something. And when we cut ourselves off from receiving, we're cutting themselves off from the benefit that they could be. So it's actually selfish to not receive.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And
agree.
like
You,
it's
you,
a paradigm shift.
sometimes I don't know. I think it's also about wearing the big girl's pants. Have you? I don't know. When I first started out, let's say someone introduced you to a workshop or speaking gig or anything, even podcast. Someone say something like nice things about you. Now I've learned, and also, I can pretend. So you walk on the stage and you're looking like happy, confident, but inside, at the beginning, I thought, oh my god, they say all these nice things about me. I felt like I'm a fraud. Like, the imposter syndrome sometimes can
Right.
kick in. The bigger the stage, for me, was the bigger that sort of okay, but I felt I have an, I call it like the performer archetype. So I wouldn't show it. So I walk on the stage and, as if thank you, thank you. But inside I was like, oh my God, I feel so small. They shouldn't have said it. I mean, how I'm going to live to that expectation. This is very personal, weird thought in the head. But obviously I get to
But
overcome
it's
it.
normal.
And that's right, but it's also part of not receiving. It would be
Yeah.
amazing to get that energy in and use it rather than, oh my god, I'm gonna get caught.
Yeah, and I will say I've learned from watching others on how to receive too, right? Like I do my own
Mm,
research. I love to like study and all of that, but I remember just that same example, Seeing I was speaking at an event in New York City, and the woman who ran the event, oh my, you want to talk about goddess vibes? Like this woman, she calls every woman in her tribe goddess. Hi, goddess. Hey, like very, very loving, very
owns it.
loved. really owns it. And I remember, I would say something kind to her and she would just sit there and put her hand on her heart and she would close her eyes and she would be like, I received that. Thank you. And I was like, whoa, that was like mind-blowing receiving on a different level that I didn't have the capacity for in that moment. And it taught me a lot about how often I slough things off, right? Like somebody will say something really nice and I'm getting much better at it, but like somebody will say something really nice about me and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like I don't believe that.
Yeah,
Like
this.
yeah. It really is. It's the diminishing. It's the like,
Yeah.
yeah. They don't really know me. They don't really know who I am. They don't really know like all my
They're just being
insecurities.
nice.
They're just being nice. Yeah. They think they know me, like whatever. And that's not necessarily true. People are telling you what their perception is of you. And like that perception that they have of you is actually like way more strong than what your perception is of yourself and their perception of you, and then they're speaking it out. So I always talk about like how we create things. Speaking is a big way that we create things, and they're speaking it and then they're giving it to all these other people who they're introducing you to. Like what an amazing gift. I mean, they're like showering you. And so but it's a tool, it's a muscle to
Mm,
learn how to like, oh, I may not feel this, and sometimes it might be, how do I acknowledge, okay, I don't see it the way they see it right now, but I'm open to seeing it the way they see me. I'm open to seeing myself the way they're seeing me. And I think that when we start to just open up our curiosity or uh ideas, right? Like just being open to the idea
mm,
that wow, they see me that way. They must believe it. They're not just saying it, right? Like I think part of this is trust and faith and learning that um you know w- most people are not just going to say things to be nice. Most people are going
mm.
to be honest.
Yeah, that's great. I agree. And I was thinking, do you think that some reason to it is due to we afraid that we cannot fulfill the expectation? I wonder why are we like that? Like, you know, I think that actually way me into the next question I meant to ask you about, like, for example, money. Why sometimes it's harder for women to ask for a bigger paycheck or ask what they deserve. We may have this tendency towards abundance, especially money in a work situation, feeling less than or afraid to ask for more. And is it in some way you think it's due to we have an expectation? What if we didn't perform 110% in order to receive that? I know I read a study where women wouldn't dare to ask for a pay rise or promotion unless they think they have done over 100% confident about the next job
Right.
role. Well, with men, as long as they're 80% confident, they gunning for it. Like we actually feel we need the extra to feel.
Well, I think I saw something similar to that C-Wing that was actually like women feel like they have to have 100% of the qualifications to apply for a new
Yes,
job,
yes.
but men, if they have like 20 or 30% of the qualifications, they'll apply for the job, right? And so this is I think a little bit different conversation. What I see energetically and my experience is I worked in corporate for 18 years, so I get it. I think that women are still so relatively new to the
Mm,
work environment
mm.
generationally, right? Men have been working and they created the corporate structure because
Yeah,
it's a masculine structure and
to
it
suit
works for
them.
men.
Yeah.
It really works for men. So there's no like I'm not downplaying that. It works for them. I don't think it always works for women. I
Mm-hmm.
would almost say that it hardly ever works for women, to be fair. Um but part of this is I don't think that women are asking for what their value is. I don't think that they understand that they are the ones who determine their worth.
Mm-hmm.
You determine your price tag, especially as an entrepreneur. This is a pitfall for a lot of new female entrepreneurs. Like you go from having a job where somebody else gave you a dollar amount and just said, this is what you're worth, and we're going to give you this raise. And they don't know that they determine their worth. And so they don't know how to negotiate,
Mm,
really, to ask for more. You don't know unless you ask, right? So we count ourselves out before we count ourselves in. We take ourselves out of the negotiation before we even ask the question.
mm,
And so going back to like, oh, there was something around why don't we receive or error? Oh, where was it? There was a thread there. I can almost see it.
you know, one of the thing I realize, I learn a lot from my children, because in terms of accepting, no problem. You know, like you give them something, love it, great. You tell them you're cute, they're like, yeah, I know, kind of thing. And ask for more. They are the specialists. They, you know, I give my daughter a candy. She's like, no, I want to. Like immediately. When did we unlearn this? Like this asking for more, it's becoming the hardest thing. A lot of women find it really challenging. But we were not born with it, clearly.
No, we're not born with it. And that's the thing. It's always there. It's always available for us to tap back into.
Mm,
I feel like I'm gonna like drop some knowledge right now. Like it's always available to tap back into. That is to me, that's source, that's spirit, that's
mm-hmm,
goddess, that's divine energy, whatever you call your higher power. Like that is always available. And it's not from an egoic space, right? It's just from a like, ooh, I wonder if I can get this. That's what your daughter's doing, right? Like, I wonder if I can get two instead of one. Why not? Why not try? And I think oh, going back to that's where it was. That was the thread. Going back to like why do we belittle ourselves in our
mm-hmm,
own head and think that those people who are complimenting us, etc., don't know who we are? It's because they see our potential and we see everything that we've failed at in the past.
mm. Tweet it.
And
Oh wait, repeat it, please. That's really important.
yeah, so people who don't know us think we're fabulous right off the bat because they see our potential. They see how we shine, what our light looks like. But we, in our memory, in our mind, we have these memories that actually aren't even the truth today any longer, right? Like they're memories, they're old, they're ancient, but we see all the failures that we've done.
Mm,
And that is what holds us back. So if we can like tap into, and this is why I think that your work, my work, this is why I think coaching is so vitally important, especially for female entrepreneurs, is that like when you can have a coach who can see your potential and just hold that vision for you,
mm.
you can step into that vision so much easier.
Sometimes I wonder, do you think it's a part of a nature to get so hung up on our mistakes? I mean, there's no answer here. I'm just suddenly thinking about what you just said. Like, I completely agree. I feel people tend to be more kind because I think people in general, the nature is kind and honest. So they see what they see, and they see our potential. While we may see this potential, but then we'll put a lot of failures and inadequacy in front of it. So obviously it's already blurred. But why are we so hang up when someone, like, not just abundance or work stuff, think about relationship. We can get really hang up about the breakups before, or how we did something wrong. And you know, and even though I've been coaching for a while and work with a lot of people, sometimes I catch myself, oh my god, I'm still hang up on a mistake I did long time ago. Failure or not, besides that, a mistake, a small regret. Sometimes I realize, oh my god, I'm still a little bit not hang up, but I have a little of something there. So I don't know whether we're building because we are more introspective and reflective in nature. I don't know why. What do you think?
I think it's definitely both the blessing and the curse of self-awareness, right? Like uh and I also think that there's so much space for forgiveness. Like, think about your children or your clients. You have so much compassion for them, right? Like, you care for them. You don't
Mm,
judge them, but we have been taught to judge ourselves. And we've been taught in this perfectionistic, like, society, right? You go to school and you have to get a good grade and you have to do all these things to, like, measure up, right? So it's kind of ingrained from childhood. And then if you decide to be an entrepreneur and go into business for yourself, all of a sudden you have to continually fail and fail and fail and fail and just continually decide to stay in the game, to stay in your business.
mm,
And it's almost like I'm always like prescribing forgiveness work
mm,
constantly. Like forgiving ourselves, forgiving anybody who comes up, forgiving our parents, forgiving siblings, forgiving past lovers, forgiving ourselves in our current relationship with our current clients, with like whatever those little things are. And then I'm always looking for the lessons. Like
mhm.
this really awful thing happened. Okay, what can I learn from it?
Yeah,
And like, and can I forgive myself? And sometimes it takes a while. It takes a while to like really, but I know that if it was my partner, I love him unconditionally, right? Like he could do anything and it would never be that bad. That's just him. Like we have a good relationship. But I'm so much more apt to like give that kindness and compassion to others before myself. I'm better now, but I'm just saying like from a past perspective, like I think that that's really, really powerful.
totally. And I think from this conversation already, like there's so much. I mean, great conversation for me already. I feel I'm learning a lot. I think one of the things you just talked about, it's almost describing forgiveness as a muscle. We actually
Yes.
have to learn to forgive, whether it's others and ourselves. And sometimes this muscle is strong today, like in yoga and exercise classes. Sometimes you're better at a pose, and today, maybe tomorrow you're not in the same energy, and you may not hold that pose so well. And I felt forgiveness, it's kind of like a muscle, and the way we trying to build up that muscles. And another thing was, we're just talking about sometimes was to hang up about certain things in the past and failure and mistakes. But it's like when listening to you, I sense that maybe cursing and blessing you mentioned, and I think maybe we should look at it as a sensitivity, like what you said.
Right.
Without that sensitivity, we may not be as compassionate. We cannot relate as well. Maybe we don't see it the way we do, and therefore help others. So that's like a sensitivity as well, to be able to recognize things that we could done better,
Mhm.
or things that may have hurt others without even we intended to, things like that. So it was fantastic. Sometimes this thing came to your head when we had this conversation. That's why I love doing podcast.
I know. Well, I love doing, yeah, I love this conversation. These are conversations I can have all day, every day.
Oh my god!
Because,
Like if you put a lot of women like us in a room, we will like
yeah,
chat the
solve all the world's problems.
entire 24 hours. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to ask you something about last year. For many people, 2020, COVID, pandemic, everything else can be very challenging. I know that there's a lot of events happening in your life, and I also have a lot of events in my life. So let's just round it up. Say it has been a challenging year for many, 2020. Everybody look at it differently, different magnitude, different things. So, but as you said before, a lot of times that we look back at the challenge to see this is a lesson. So what's your take about looking back 2020, that what is the thing that you learned from it most of all? And what helps you to go forward? Maybe like humanity 2.1, or like why 2.1? I mean, that's kind of weird model, but doing better, or the thing that we wanted to improve. I mean, what do you learn most out of it, 2020?
Yeah, so 2020 was a challenging year for everyone. I personally had a breast cancer scare. I had my grandmother die, my cat of 18 years die, my cousin was shot to death on New Year's Eve.
Oh my god.
Like crazy things happened, right? My sister's business burnt down. It was a year of trauma, and
Mm,
I'm not saying that everybody had that traumatic of a year. I pray to God, like nobody else had that traumatic of a year. It was a lot, and I would say that I think that my biggest lesson was to sit with the pain as it was coming up, like
stick with it,
crying, to
like
sit with it,
okay, let it wash
to
over.
Yes, to just feel the feelings. I mean, there were days where I just cried.
Mm,
Um, and then of course in the States, we had the racial injustice stuff going
mm,
on and inequality. And I don't know about you, C Wing, but I'm empathic. I feel the collective. I feel the energy. I feel people's sadness. They don't have to be next to me. They don't even have to be in the same city or state. I just feel everything.
yeah.
And so there were days where my coach at the time was like, if you're not crying every day, I don't know how you're doing life right now.
Mm,
Like we were just sobbing. I mean, and so I think that there was a deeper learning for me personally to really be able to feel my feelings and to sit with them and be okay with them. Again, that self-compassion, that forgiveness for being human. I grew up thinking that I needed to be a machine and have no feelings. And what that did was make me physically ill, emotionally unfulfilled, spiritually disconnected. Like I just was really in a rut. When I was not allowing myself to be a human being. And then the other, and I think that this goes hand in hand, the second lesson was surrender.
mm,
I got audited too by the IRS. Like I literally just remember just surrendering and being
mm,
like, all right, spirit, I don't know what's here for me, but I can't do this by myself.
yeah.
And so you get to like lead the way. I trust. I don't know what I'm doing. I've wanted to control things my entire life. I get it now. And it was just this continual surrender over surrender over surrender. My cat was 18 and a half years old. I had been with him since he was a kitten. So that was like my deepest
Mm,
love, my deepest relationship. And I was grateful actually that like I had the couple days to like, make the decision, the humane decision to like let him, go to sleep, at the vet's office and uh, euthanize him humanely and be with him in that moment, even though it was COVID.
mm,
And I don't think that they were supposed to have two people in there, my partner and I, but they let us have both of us in there, thankfully, at that time. And, to be able to honor his life and to do the same thing with my grandmother. I
mm,
was grateful that I, I've gotten so much better at, I think 2020 was a culmination for me to see my own growth,
mhm,
right? Like I got to see how much more present I was. My stepdad passed away too. So I went back to my hometown when my stepfather passed away to help my sisters through it. And because I've always been kind of a mom to them. And at that moment, I felt the nudge to go spend time with my grandmother.
right.
And that wouldn't have been on my priority list, but I was like, you know what, I should do that. I feel called to do that in this moment, very present to that. And so I did. I spent a couple different afternoons with her, playing card games with her, helping her with her medication, all of that. And so then when she passed away 6 weeks later, and I was back at home and I physically couldn't go to the funeral because of the restrictions,
Mhm,
um, I was able to be at peace with
mhm,
I spent time with her. I had that, closure in a way, right? And so I think to me, life is about emotional intelligence. And when we're able to feel the feelings, and yeah, I cried. I cried a lot in 2020, probably more than any other year, to be honest, because it was just, there was so much going on and so much heaviness and so much tragedy. But being able to be present with it, be present with myself and give myself the time. And there were some days where I had appointments and I had to be like, you know what, today's not the day.
mm.
I can't, like you and I were supposed to record this months ago. And I was like, "See Wing, I love you and I'm not in a place right now." And I just knew, I was like, I'll know when the time is right. I
Mhm,
trust that internal guidance. I trust that if this opportunity is meant to happen again, it will happen again. And to me, that's a lot of faith in something bigger than myself, right? Like greater good, universe, source, God, whatever you want to call
mm.
higher power. That was a big lesson that I took out of 2020.
That was actually wearing a big girl's pants in that sense of taking care of yourself, the self-care piece. I mean, and also which is sitting through the hard, difficult times and know that all that shall pass, and being present, and what a huge growth, because I think you and I have a similar scenario in the sense that we're trying to be like machine in some ways. When I was
Right.
younger, I also, one of the very distinctive things I really can relate to what you said before was I didn't want to fell in love like head over heel in love thing. It's not my thing, it's not my jam. I don't like it because of my background, the way I was brought up. My parents were working so late, and I was very alone, and therefore very independent by nature. I don't know, not like because of circumstance. But I think one of the things that you didn't know, but you learn instinctively is I don't want to depend on anyone, emotional or physical. So since I was very little, I was very independent. But I did not realize that also in terms of relationship, I didn't want to love too much. I don't want to be in, the crazy head over heel thing in romantic movies. I cannot relate. I just don't have it. Because I think it's a fear in some ways to, feeling abandoned, or I'm not okay unless you are here, look after me. I don't know what that was. But, I sense that when you talk about trying to be almost like a machine, not trying to be fully present and not so emotional, that was me, younger me as well. And to step out of it, I think coming of age help, wearing the big girl's pants help. But obviously, inevitably, when you either have a family crisis, a health crisis, or in my case, having children, you can't. You just you just gotta be human. And it kind of those opportunities to help us to be more human and embrace that. And you talked about it definitely is very challenging year, but the way you describe it, I can see it's like coming in waves, isn't it? And
Right.
then but you manage to, it's almost like a sailboat that you kind of ride on top of it, you go through it rather than you know another really horrible way to handle it is to deny or shut it down or not sitting through it. And then what happened is that it will still be there until we are ready to resolve it, which may or may not be helpful.
Well, and it always comes out, whether we think it's
Yes.
coming out or not, right? Like when we think that we're shoving it down, what's really happening is it's coming out sideways through
Yes.
anger, through, resentment, through bitterness. I mean,
Addictions.
I lived a good portion of my life probably drinking way more than anybody needed to, and self-pacifying in a lot of different ways because I didn't want to feel my feelings, because I think that like in our culture we're not taught emotional intelligence. We're not taught how to sit with our feelings and how to honor them. And when we actually can sit with them, and I always tell my clients, I'm like, use it as a mantra, not I am sad, because when you say I am something, like you're declaring
Mm-hmm.
you are that thing. So you are not sad, you are not pathetic, you are not whatever. Like don't tell the story about what's going on, but feel the feeling. And so I use it as a mantra. I feel sad. I
Mm-hmm.
feel sad. And in order to be, present with it, I just say that to myself over and over, and then I will cry. And honestly, it goes pretty fast when you can like just sit with it. And I just heard somebody say like it's like digesting, it's like metabolizing. And when you learn how to feel your feelings in a more profound way, you're way more productive because everybody's having the feelings anyway. It's just whether you're actually letting yourself feeling them or not, or whether they're holding you up in other ways. Um, or you're digesting them and metabolizing them and getting better and better digestion as a result.
Mm. So winding up, wrapping up our interview, very, very inspiring. I love our conversation. So last question. So what do you inspire you these days, especially looking into 2021? What's sort of the word or the mantra or the thing that you have in mind for this year?
I am really passionate about helping women step into their sovereignty.
Mm,
And this is such a big piece for me. And see, when you mentioned it a little bit, like not wanting to love so deeply because you don't want to lose yourself in
mm-hmm.
those relationships, it feels like is what you were talking about.
Yes.
I've lost myself in relationships before, and I think that it's so easy for us as women to give of ourselves so much that we forget who we are.
Mm,
And so my big motivation for the time to come is to continue to inspire women to live in their truth,
Mhm.
to really be able to shine their gifts super brightly, to heal the relationship with money so that they can ask for what they desire, for what they feel that they need to live and what they feel like they're worth. And really to just be a brighter, more visible person. I mean, I think that's my biggest prayer for myself, my own life, and
Mm,
really helping to inspire more people. So thank you for having me
beautiful.
here for sure, because this is definitely a big piece of that. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. So thank you so much for today, for your time. And if people want to get to know you better, connect with you, I will put your website details there. And is there any best way to find you online?
I would say I'm Celeste Hartwell everywhere,
Hmm.
Instagram, Facebook,
Yes.
CelesteHartwell.com actually pushes over to divinefeminine.leaders.com if Divine Feminine Leaders is too much of a mouthful. And so, yeah, Celeste Hartwell is where I am everywhere. So thank you. Thank you so much,
Perfect.
Seawing. I deeply
Thank
appreciate you.
Me too. Thank you so much.